Hello, John Talley here with Partzilla.com, and welcome back to another live stream on our Friday at 3 o'clock edition. And today, I actually have somebody that you may recognize from our YouTube channel. His name is Garrett, and Garrett's decided to sit in with us on this live Q&A and maybe throw a couple of questions his way. He's been with us pretty much from the get-go and coming up to speed, getting a little bit more, comfortable in front of the camera. Not that I'm a pro at this or anything, but Garrett's been a big help, and he is actually a great wealth of knowledge, even though I have a lot of t-shirts that are older than him. But, he has a strong memory, whereas mine fails from time to time. So we're both going to be here to answer questions, so go ahead and shoot them to us. And it looks like the board is already jumping. And Garrett, you want to lead off with that first one from Beast Reality?
Beast Reality, let's see. The first message says he has a Honda VT750 and 1 carb floods. Then he replied again, I cleaned it and switched the float needle, but persist to bypass. Is 3 PSI too much? Well, 3 PSI is pretty much like an automotive pressure, which sounds normal for a car, but on a motorcycle, it's a little too much. You probably want anywhere from 1 to 1.5 PSI.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but on a 87 VT, is there even a pump on it? I thought that was just
a vacuum. Yeah,
I thought it was just a vacuum / gravity feed. So I'm a little curious why you had a pump on there to begin with. And I mean, if I'm wrong, we can definitely go back and research back in 87. I don't think you were born yet.
I was born a year.
Okay. But we can go back and take a look at it, and I'll see what that number should be if it in fact does have a pump on there. So, but my first guess would be, no, it shouldn't even have one. So let us find that out and run that down. Then we'll get back in touch with you and lead off that with next week's live Q&A. All right, next we've got Scott Miles. Hi, John. I have a 2014 Ranger 570. He has 3 2014 Ranger 570s. Although a lot of miles, oil has always been done. 2 of them rod bearings went at 6,000 miles. Is Polaris known for this? No, they shouldn't have gone that quick. Are they getting worked that hard? Because when you're telling me you've got 3 of them, that seems to indicate that they actually work for a living instead of just playing on the weekends on a random basis. And that being said, the scheduling for the oil changing, it really needs to be cut back a little bit. So I would say change it even more often, especially if you're working them every single day. I would want to know how many miles you're actually going in between oil changes. Once you know that, maybe cut it in half. Because let's face it, oil and filters are cheap compared to pulling an engine apart and having to redo the bearings. Not a lot of fun. So whatever your maintenance schedule is, increase it, probably by half the time or the mileage. All right, you want to take the next one, Garrett?
Let's see, then where you left off.
Jordan Curry.
Jordan Curry. Let's see. Hello, John. A while back, I asked about no reverse on a 300. Do you recall that one, John?
We went into that one, and there was an interlock that you have to pull before you can actually put it into reverse on the 300. And my question was, is that cable operational? Because unless you pull that interlock, it's not going to let it go into reverse. So I would say check that cable. I'm pretty sure that's probably what I said back then.
I can pick up the next one. The next one's from Jackboy 2007. He asked, where can I buy air filter cleaning supplies? Well, I mean, if you're talking about a foam filter or a paper filter, we offer those products on our website, Partzilla.com, and I'm sure one of our guys can post a link right here in this very chat.
And the ones you would want to use, and I think I did a how-to video on those, is the PJ1 has a great setup, whether or not, whether you have like a K&N that's recleanable or a foam filter. They actually have a cleaner that does both. And then the oil is filter dependent, whether it be like a K&N style or a foam style. So you may want to check out our playlist and find that video and see how to do it. It's a really easy process, just have to be a little patient waiting for the, especially on the foam filter side, for them to dry out completely before you oil them. All right, somebody's asking me, Mr. Redneck, hey John, a while back, I asked about no reverse on the Rancher 350. You said to tighten the cable. That worked for a while. Now it doesn't work at all. Did you over tighten the cable possibly? That would be my my concern. If it's got too much tension on there, then it's not going to want to release it fully out of reverse and then engage the or reverse and then not want to engage into the forward slot. So check your tension on that particular cable. All right, Garrett, what you got?
See, from, I think this is the same from Redneck Bobby. Why is my Grizzly 700 2007 model transmission making a grinding, humming noise, and it's also getting stuck in reverse?
Oh boy.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you've had some contaminants put into the transmission or the engine oil, and it sounds to me like the valleys on the shift drum have worn out and possibly gear damage as well. Maybe whether it be water and mud down inside of the oil system. So that's probably going to be a first place to check.
Yeah, I would agree. If you're having that type of intense sound and getting stuck into reverse, you're going to end up pulling apart. You can try flushing it out a couple of times, and that'll buy you a little bit of time, but you're going to end up going in there and possibly replacing shift drums and gears and whatnot. So hold on, that one's going to be a job there. All right, Beast responded back, it has a factory pump that had a signal coming from the CDI for a pulse gen to send the signal to the pump. Okay, well now we know. We don't have to research that 86750 now. But once again, as Garrett noted in the beginning, 3 PSI sounds high. I would guess half that, 1 to 1.5, because the flow rate just does not suggest that you need 3 PSI of flow. So going with that Napa pump, that was, I'm sure, made for a car type application, and it's just too much for this to deal with. Now, I have seen inline attenuators, if you will, that can cut the flow or cut the pressure back if you choose to do that, go that direction instead of replacing the pump with the OEM style, if it's even available for an 86. That is going back a few years.
I also believe they make regulators too, inline regulators, so you can manually adjust it.
That was the word I could come up. What did I call it? An attenuator?
Attenuator, yeah.
That's my electrical side coming out in me. Sorry.
Let's see. Let's say, hey John, I have a 01 TRX 350. It's been sitting for years. I installed a new battery and I'm getting fire to the starter solenoid, but I'm not getting a green light when I cut the key on where it should look. Where should I look? The green light is your neutral position switch. That's the first place I would check, is the neutral. I think they call it a neutral start switch or whatever. And if I'm not mistaken, if that model is electric shift or not, if it is, another thing to look at is the angle sensor, and which basically determines when the four-wheeler is like flipped over on its side, it'll kill fire to the engine. So I would look at your neutral switch and then your angle sensor. That would be 2 places I'd start.
And just for kicks, make sure the bulb has resistance in it, and
Yeah.
the bulb's not burned out. I've chased that one before, so word to the wise. All right, John's asking me, when I put my FMF pipe on my 110, it makes a popping noise when I ride it. And I'm betting you're talking about it kind of pops on D-cell. Well, here's the trick. On most of the machines out there, they all pop on D-cell. But with the stock exhaust system, you don't hear it. When you go with a higher flow FMF type pipe or a muffler on it, guess what? You're going to hear it. So it's probably doing it the whole time, and you're just now hearing it for the most part.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. Hey guys, well this is from Ryan Sanderson. Hey guys, I have an 01 350 Honda. I recently changed the oil and cut the old oil filter open and found a small amount of metal in it. Is that normal? If it was a brand new engine and you just freshly rebuilt it, yeah, I would say some metal shavings is normal for the break-in procedure. But if this is an 01, you shouldn't be seeing any type of metal inside of the oil filter.
Yeah, I'd be a little bit scared on that one. The next question I would ask, how long had it been since you'd changed the oil in it? And also, how many miles are on it? And how many are you doing in between services? But I would definitely keep an eye on that. When things start going south, it's better to go ahead and take care of it and address it quickly, other than just ride it till it breaks, because that way, if you ride it till it breaks, you're going to be fixing a whole lot of other problems other than whatever the issue may be. You may be having abnormal wear on just one of the gears, and then you can get in there and take care of it. But if you keep going, that metal is going to spread throughout the engine, get into your main bearings, I mean, your valve train, everything, and just eat the engine alive. And then, well, you're basically looking at a totaled machine at that point, especially as one that's got a few years on it, but there's nothing wrong with that. What you got, Garrett?
Let's see. Okay.
You have a fan. Guest star Garrett.
Guest star Garrett.
Recognize that last name.
Let's see. This is from Jordan Curry. It says, "Hey John, thanks for all the videos. I have a 2003 400EX. I put a blocker on the park brake and it's still leaking. Do these settings actually work, or did I do something wrong? Thanks." Put a blocker on the park brake? Those are cable, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't know what he's talking about. That.
Yeah.
Well, the parking brake, I think on those is you pull it in and it actually that little latch slips over.
Slips forward, yeah. It's kind of like a little shifter in its own, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I'm not entirely. I can't really recall. I thought, to my knowledge, I thought it was like that.
I thought it was a mechanical.
Yeah, mechanical parking brake.
And he says it's leaking, so we're not following you on that one.
Unfortunately, I kind of don't understand. Maybe if you could, you know, retype something else. Maybe the model's wrong or something. So, let's see.
All right. Caesar's asking me, "Hi, I'm installing a new piston on my DT125MX. I think this is a Suzuki, yeah,
dirt bike.
And the rings have a gap of over 1.15 millimeters. Is this appropriate? Do I need to bore out my cylinder since the piston I bought is the closest that it will go in? 1.15 millimeters? That sounds like a lot in my world.
Yeah, that is a lot for a piston gap.
So I wouldn't. He says the rings have a gap, and he's talking about just gapping the rings. That sounds, if anything, excessive. But you would rather have too much of a gap than not enough, because not enough, the rings would get bound as they heated up. They would bind up and then wear prematurely. So it's better to have too much of a gap. But that seems to be excessive. But what you really need to do is go back, do the research, find out what the ring gap should be, and then adjust toward that, and not just what you have. So, I mean, if you have to get another set of rings, then that's what you're going to have to do to get it done right. Because if you put together a cylinder with pistons and rings and it's not the correct size, A, it's going to wear prematurely, or B, it's not going to actually run right at all because it's not developing the compression it should, because the tolerances are there for a reason, so it can actually perform as it should. All right, Garrett, you got one picked out?
Let's see, I think we went through our list. John, what make on this?
Oh, I see a potential video coming up, guys.
Yeah.
Richard is asking me, "Hello, do you need any specialty tools to replace a Honda Goldwing GL 1800 rear shock?" It's been a little while since I had to pull one of those. I think the last time I actually pulled it, I did it as an assembly because we were triking the Goldwing. But we have a GL 1800 here, and shoot, let's find out. We'll do a quick video on how to pull the rear shock. How would that do for you, Richard? And when we set it live, we'll send you a notification. I mean, what the heck?
Yeah.
We'll just come up with a video list on the fly.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
AJ is asking me, "Hey John, what is the vehicle model that when you see it coming into the shop, you say to yourself, this isn't going to be fun?" I'm not going to bash maker model, but what I usually will consider when I see one walk in or roll in is just the overall condition of it. And that would be this one right here. When I went to go pick this one up, I looked at it and I had to just kind of tilt my head, and because it was tilted because this one had not been maintained. And how somebody can invest the kind of money it takes to get one of these machines and then treat it the way this one has been treated, yeah, that hurts my feelings. But case in point, we're going to bring this one back. And one of the cool things that we're going to do is this one actually has a bent frame, and we're going to go through and do all the measurements on the new one. So if you're trying to figure out if yours is out of whack, this will be a point of reference. And then just for fun, we're going to put a camera over the top of both of them and do a time lapse of what it takes to go from here over to where we're sitting on the new frame. So it's not so much a how-to video, it's just a fun, fast time lapse.
Yeah.
How to build a Whack Z1000R in 18 minutes or whatever the time lapse turns out to be.
And as far as units, my personal worst would happen to be like a Goldwing with an electrical ghost. I'd rather just like not come into work for the day than mess with electrical problems on a Goldwing.
Were you around when the Ratmobile came through?
Yes, I was.
I think I've mentioned that one before. That was the one that we had rats, or the owner had rats build a nest directly over the intake system, and it was ugly. And we won't go into the smell, but it was bad.
Let's see.
Yeah, Jordan's coming back at us. This is on the rear end beside the brake, beside the brake caliper. It moves the actual. Okay, it moves the actual parking brake and has an insert, but it's still leaking brake fluid. All right, he's right. There is a line that runs back, a mechanical line, but it's actually pulling an arm, an actuator on the side of the rear brake.
Okay.
That's how that parking brake operates. It took me a while to remember.
Okay, so it's a secondary lever.
It's a secondary level,
okay.
but evidently it's leaking at that seal. So it sounds like you're going to have to replace that seal that is on the other side of that arm.
So he's talking about on the drum itself.
On the drum.
Okay,
Well,
I thought
it's
he was
not on the drum. It's actually a disc. It's a caliper.
Caliper. Okay.
But it's a mechanical arm back there just for the parking brake.
Okay.
It's been a while since I've thought about that one. Yeah, it sounds like that seal is going to need to be replaced. All right, guys. What else we have here? J.I. Martinez is asking, he's got a 2002 GSXR 600. When I turn the key to on, I have no power whatsoever. Relay is good, and fuse only gets power when the key is turned to P. Okay, well that sounds like it's going to be in the switch itself, on off
the
switch.
ignition switch.
The ignition switch itself. Just remember, when you do that, don't just order the switch because it's going to come with a key. You'll need to order a key set, unless you want to carry around 2 keys, because I believe you've got a that rear section that you can unlock and store under the rear seat pad.
The little seat compartment.
So you may want to invest and go ahead and get the entire lock set, so you're not having to run around with 2 keys. I mean, the good old days when your car had a ignition key and then a door key.
Right.
So once again, he probably doesn't know what the world I'm talking about with that.
I had an '88 Chevrolet K5 Blazer. It had a separate key for the ignition and the door.
You are correct.
I have a AJ Bartleson. I've seen ATV carriers with a grease nipple on them. This is an aftermarket item, but do you grease it up once and leave it alone, or do you come back on a cycle service? Absolutely, you want to come back on a cycle service with those, because as the moving metal moves around, it starts consuming grease, and that grease will dissipate over time. And it's usually a good idea to do it every 6 to 8 weeks or so, maybe every other service when you change the engine oil. And also depends on your riding conditions too. If you're in a lot of mud and water, you want to do that a lot more often.
Okay, Beast has got another one for us. He says, my friend has an 01 Honda Rancher 350 ES. It has shifting issues. There is an arm which it makes contact with a centrifugal clutch when you shift, and it won't let it gauge due to not enough travel. It's probably not so much enough travel as those arms that you're talking about are actually this clutch material, and they will eventually wear down. So it sounds to me like those arms that you're talking about need to be replaced. I can't remember if there's 3 or 4 that are positioned, inside of the centrifugal clutch, but you can replace those separately. But think about it, if they're wearing, then that outer hub is probably wearing as well. So just take that in consideration. I mean, if you've got grooves that are cut that deep in it, it's probably time for both A and B to be replaced. So if it's just the material on the arms, so to speak, just replace those and you'll be fine. But while you're in there, I would suggest replacing the springs that are holding each one back as well, because they're going to be worn and they do wear out after a while. And it gets ugly if one of those springs actually breaks, because the different pieces start to fly around and then chaos ensues.
And a centrifugal clutch is a lot like brake system on a car. Caliper and rotor, it's just reversed. So in the weight of the actual shoe is pushing forward on the metal, which gives it, makes it bite and make contact. Let's see.
All right, Terrence is asking me, hey John, a friend of mine has a 2015 Suzuki King Quad 750 with power steering. He really just uses it for farm work and would rarely go fast on it. He likes to keep his finger barely on the throttle, 8 to 12 miles per hour the whole time, okay? He has a problem when riding the vehicle. He would often just suddenly try to cut out, but it would still stay running. Also, it's pretty hard to start as well. Could this be just the way he rides it at a constant speed and throttle, or is it about time to adjust the valves on it? I hope it isn't the valves, because the King Quad is a pain to work on, barely any space at all. Well, honestly, it sounds like he's babying it to the point it's choking itself. I mean, old story, way back, my brothers and I and my family were on a vacation down in Florida. On our way up, long story short, we dropped by a friend's house where their grandmother had this 1967 Pontiac Tempest that she drove, pretty much her entire life, and she couldn't drive anymore, and they offered to sell it to us. And we paid a paltry amount for it and took it out on the expressway, or the highway, to get it home, and it was just barely moving. Brother finally put his foot into it all the way. Big black cloud of smoke blew out the back, and she took off like a scalded dog. Well, it should have been choked the entire time, and I bet you that's what's happening to your Suzuki King Quad.
I think an old automotive term would be blow out the carbon.
Blow out the carbon.
Yeah.
If you baby them that much, it's not a good thing. You need to get out and stretch their legs every so often. So if he's a really good friend of yours, why don't you say, well, can I borrow yours for a weekend? And I won't even charge you to get it running right. And all you need to do is go run the crap out of it and bring it back to him on Sunday.
Yeah. Let's see. I have an Antonio Arroyo. It says, I have a 2001 Sportsman 500 HO. What type of coolant do I need, and where do I put water? If I'm not mistaken, that particular, it's a regular 50-50 mix, so you want 50% antifreeze, 50% water. Polaris actually sells antifreeze that, it's already prepackaged by Polaris. If I'm not mistaken, I think the radiator is underneath the front fairing, like where the cargo rack is on the front of the four-wheeler. If I'm not mistaken, that's where it's at. It's kind of look underneath the right side tire, and you should see the reservoir there. And you just unscrew the cap and fill it up.
All right, if you're not going to go with the Polaris type of coolant, just make sure that the coolant that you do use is really designed to go in aluminum applications. I mean, 99% of them are out there, but just make sure of that. Chop Shop 2 says, I'm the best part of you and I need a raise. Hint, hint. Probably not going to happen. But I appreciate the vote of confidence over there. All right, Daniel Johnson's asking me, could a bad stator or rectifier cause a YFZ 450 to only backfire and not stay started? Well, you're talking about this charging system, but part of the stator cabling most of the time, or the wiring, is also a pickup that gives that tells the CDI where the engine is in its rotation. It's called a pickup coil, and it tells the ignition when to fire. So that could be a problem. I'm curious why you were wanting to, thinking it was the stator or the rectifier. But thinking it through a little bit more, if the rectifier is not doing what it's supposed to do and really overcharging the battery, sending too much voltage, I could see that being an issue as well. What do you think? Yeah,
it definitely would fry your battery for sure.
Right.
And I know the stator's not working and you got a slack battery, that'll cause, if the main thing is you want to make sure your air filter is clean properly. That's the number one reason why dirt even makes its way into the system, And so, you know, to prevent
We just
that.
lost the feed. Okay.
Re-ask that or redo that question.
Okay.
Okay, we're back. Go ahead.
From AJ Bartleson. In your why do engines break video, you shown a picture of a scored cylinder piston and recommended a replacement. How often does dirt go down into the bottom end? Well, it depends on how long you let it go. Before, you know, on your regular services, for instance, like if you don't change your air filter for a long period of time, that's the #1 reason dirt is introduced in the system to begin with. So the longer, yeah, like this bad boy over here, it had an anthill in his air filter. But when getting down to the bottom end, it'll start spinning rod bearings and crankshaft main bearings and stuff like that. Hold on a second. But as far as like how often does this happen, it depends on, like I said, your service intervals on your bike.
Right, Ethan's given us an easy one here. What to do is, in the top end, is taking on a 400EX, adjust the valves. And we actually have a video that shows you how to do that on that particular model. So guys, if you would direct Ethan to that particular one, that was actually one of our early ones in our previous studio. I think I was even wearing a different shirt.
Different shirt, everything. Yeah. One of the first ones we did.
Back when I was young and foolish. And I'm just old and foolish. And they got that covered. Well, Garrett, believe it or not, we just rattled through 30 minutes.
Wow.
Just like that.
Went by.
I told you. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and hang it up. We actually have some recording to do this afternoon, don't we, Evan? He doesn't look very enthusiastic. Sorry, you're not leaving early today. Well, listen, we just want to say thanks for dropping by, sending in a few questions our way. And if we didn't get to your question or couldn't get it answered, we'll do a little research and maybe lead off with it at the beginning of the next week's live feed. Once again, we just want to say thanks for shopping here with us. Garrett, appreciate you coming out and helping me with this.
I'm glad to be here.
Everybody have a good weekend, a safe week, and we will see you next Friday. Enjoy having you here. Enjoy doing this, and thank you for shopping here with us at Partzilla. God bless.